Hello and welcome to the CUFI Weekly. I'm your host, Kasim Hafiz. This week we have to cover the biggest news story. The Taliban have once again taken control of Afghanistan. The elected government of Ashraf Ghani essentially resigned and Ghani fled the country just a few days ago. As we stand today, while I'm recording this, the Taliban are in Kabul. They have taken pictures inside the presidential palace. They're essentially wrapping up their conquest of the country. This is 20 years. We are barely a month away from the 20th anniversary of 9/11. And we toppled the Taliban. We took away al-Qaeda's safe haven, and 20 years later, the Taliban are back. No doubt with that will come the resurgence of al-Qaeda. But I'll get to that in a second. So, with the Taliban back in control of Afghanistan, we are evacuating US personnel, we are evacuating our allies and our partners. You're seeing horrific images from Hamid Karzai Airport of people trying to hold on to the wheels of planes leaving. They've seen Taliban rule before, and going by the early reports, this Taliban rule looks to be more brutal than the first. They look to have been inspired by ISIS, the rapes, the forced marriages, the executions. This is horrific for the people of Afghanistan, and my heart bleeds for them, especially the women. For 20 years, they had a hope of a better future. They had a hope that tomorrow would not bring the Taliban, but within months, we saw the Afghan National Army capitulate in the face of the US withdrawal. And there's that awful picture, reminiscent of Saigon, of US Embassy staff being evacuated from the top of the embassy in Kabul. Aside from the awful toll on the people of Afghanistan, which we can't ignore and we have to keep them in our prayer, what does this say to our allies firstly? For a country like Israel, which is dealing with the threat of Iran, this shows that maybe the US isn't the ally who's going to be there and stand with you. This is not what the United States stands for, and it is awful that this is how we're being perceived. What does this say to our enemies? What does this say to Iran? What does this say to Hezbollah? What does this say to ISIS? And what does this say to al-Qaeda? We have to consider the threat level that has increased against the American people. We have to consider the threat level which has increased against our ally, Israel. Yes, Israel does not share borders with Afghanistan. It's not right next to Afghanistan. But when you see a jihadist group being emboldened, when you have jihadists celebrating this as a victory over the West, this is dangerous. Especially because Israel is always in the crosshairs. These groups, be them Hezbollah or the Iranian government who are Shia Muslims, or the Taliban and al-Qaeda, hate Israel. They hate Jews and are pledged to the destruction of the Jewish state and the Jewish people. And now, once again, al-Qaeda is re-emerging like a phoenix from the flames with a home base under the patronage of the Taliban. This is incredibly dangerous. And we saw in previous years, al-Qaeda had cells in the Gaza Strip and the West Bank and even Jerusalem. And now they have a home base where they can plan, they can calculate and plot their next move, they can recruit operatives, and they can use this US withdrawal and the fall of Afghanistan as the perfect recruiting tool. This is emboldening them. It's going to embolden groups like Hamas. Only weeks ago, the Taliban and Hamas leaders were meeting in Doha, Qatar. For those who are condemning the Taliban, rightly so. For those who are speaking out against the brutality of the Taliban, rightly so. Where were you when Hamas was attacking Israel? These are two sides of the same coin. The Hamas terrorist organization in Gaza and the Taliban. You want to see the pictures of Hamas leadership sitting with the Taliban, smiling, congratulating them on taking over Afghanistan? They're all there. But you were silent when that terrorist group was attacking the Jewish state. And now you want to talk about human rights? Now you want to talk about right and wrong? Now you want to talk about terrorism? The hypocrisy is staggering. The double standard that is constantly being shown. And now once again it's being shown. So if you were so silent, not only silent but justifying the actions of Hamas, if you were making excuses for Hamas when they were attacking Israel and firing rockets at Israeli children, murdering an Israeli child, if you are now getting on some sort of soapbox to condemn the Taliban, save it. You're a hypocrite. They're all about political motivation, not about right and wrong. Your moral compass was broken a long time ago. Please don't try and salvage it right now. It's not the time. This has been a difficult week for a lot of people. For our veterans who served and had friends who served and lost friends, my heart goes out to you. For the Afghan people, the future looks very bleak. There are currently US troops on their way to the region to help with evacuations. Keep them in your prayers. We have to be strong in who we are. We need to stand by our friends. We need to stand by our allies in the Middle East. We need to stand against terror, extremism, and those who will perpetuate what the Taliban perpetuate. If you have any comments, if you served in Afghanistan, you had family who served in Afghanistan, maybe you're from Afghanistan originally and still have family there, please leave your comments below. We would love to hear from you. Until next week, this is Qasim Hafiz for the CUFI Weekly, saying, for Zion's sake, do not remain silent.
Thanks for checking out today's episode of CUFI Weekly. If you enjoyed this episode and want to stay up to date with the latest news from the Middle East along with topics involving US-Israel relations, please be sure to like and subscribe. And remember to click that notification button so that you are notified every time a new show is uploaded.